there, this is Pamela, and I'm here to give you book number 8 in the Temeraire series. So, I have an entire playlist devoted to the first 7 books in this series that I have been just thoroughly enjoying. I've said before that I haven't enjoyed a series this much since Harry Potter or Sergei Lukianenko's Watch series, so this has been an extraordinary adventure for me. I really thoroughly enjoyed reading this series. So I'm on book 8 now. There's only one more to go, and then that's it. That's the end of the series. Yeah, but so this is Blood of Tyrants. So in this book, Laurence is shipwrecked. It starts off with him washing up on the shores of Japan, because we haven't been to Japan yet in this world. We have been to pretty much everywhere. We've been to China, we've been to the UK, we've been to Europe, we've been to Turkey, Australia, South America, but not Japan. So how do dragons live in Japan? So Laurence washes up on the shore of Japan, and he has lost his memory. So he has no memory of Temeraire and who he was before he met Temeraire, basically. He remembers that he was a captain, he remembers that he had a ship, but he doesn't remember the 8 years, essentially, he has spent with Temeraire. So he's taken in by a Japanese nobleman who takes him to his home and looks after him. So he's very confused. He doesn't understand what he's doing in Japan. You know, how did he end up there? What kind of mission could he have possibly been on to wash up on Japanese shores? But then, you know, one thing leads to another, and we do obviously get to see how the dragons are in Japan, and dragons are very important in Japan, just like they are in China and South America. They are leaders. He is told that he's going to have an audience with a lady, and that lady turns out to be a dragon. Later on, he eventually escapes, helped by one of the servants or apprentices from this household. And they go to a temple, and in that temple lives a dragon who is insanely important. So she's wonderful, this dragon, and she really kind of comes across as being a huge contrast with Japanese tradition, because obviously the Japanese and the dragons are very traditionalist. They uphold honor, but the dragon in the temple is very different. She asks Laurence to recite poetry for her, and all he can think of is English poetry. She doesn't care that it's English poetry, because he can speak Chinese, she can speak Chinese, but she can't speak English. She doesn't care. She doesn't mind that he recites poems in English. So she kind of craves poetry in all forms. So she takes them, they ask her to take them down to the shore so he could try and meet up with his ship. So she takes them down the river, where she gets called upon by Japanese farmers to ask her to water their crops. So the dragons are used to water the rice crops. So she goes down there, and they're these kind of water dragons. They live in water, they live in the sea. So she waters their crops, and so they can get 2 rice crops a year instead of 1. So the dragons in Japan also serve a different purpose than they do in the rest of the world. While Laurence is lost in Japan, not really knowing what he's doing there, Temeraire and the rest of the crew are still on their ship that is shipwrecked, and they're trying to get it. It's stuck on some rocks, they're trying to get it off. And obviously Temeraire is trying to find Laurence, so he tries to go to the Japanese shores, whereby they get caught by a sea dragon who defends the shores, and it doesn't end well. Things happen. Eventually Laurence gets reunited with Temeraire, and he's kind of told who he is, even though the ship's surgeon doesn't really want them to tell him. He's more inclined to help him, like, remember things on his own. What I find great about this is Temeraire kind of just goes along with him as if nothing's happened. Like, he knows that he's lost his memory, but he doesn't understand in what way that kind of changes anything between them. Laurence, on the other hand, is supremely confused as to how the hell he ended up being the captain of a dragon and in the Dragon Corps defending England, and how 8 years of his life have just disappeared, wiped from his memory. So they end up going to China. He's been summoned to China at the end of book 7. They go to China. A lot of stuff happens. He meets up with his adoptive brother, the Crown Prince, and there's an attempted assassination, and everything spirals out of control. And at this point, I don't know if I really should kind of go on with this, because I don't want to spoil too much of this at this point, because it gets intense. They end up in Russia. So it's, because again, Russia's another country we hadn't seen yet as to how they, deal with their dragons. It was hinted at all the way through the series that Russia doesn't treat its dragons the way it should, that the dragons, especially in the breeding grounds, were particularly mistreated. So what I enjoyed about this is, obviously this is alternative history. What we are getting here is Napoleon's campaign in Russia, because all of this is following the Napoleonic Wars, but with dragons. So Napoleon is trying to invade Russia. So he failed to do that in real life, in our world. And he also fails to do that in Temeraire's world, but not for the same reasons. And it's interesting. So Napoleon is invading Russia with his army, and Temeraire and Laurence end up there. They manage to convince the Chinese army to send forces over to Russia to defeat Napoleon, which they do. We also get to see how the Japanese army deals with dragons, because we did kind of get to see that in book 2. Throne of Jade, I think it was. I don't have my books with me, because as you can see, I've got my old set here. I don't have access to my bookcase at the moment, but yeah. So Throne of Jade, it was told that the dragons in the army were utilized in a very different way than they are in the UK. They don't have riders. They're not kind of used in combat formations. They are an entire army. And in this book there's like 300 dragons that come from all over China that unite into this one massive army that travel all the way across Russia in small groups to not kind of alarm anyone, and end up outside of Moscow to fight Napoleon. But we also get to see the Russian dragons and how they're utilized. So the Russian dragons are very different. Again, it is an incredibly brutal world that they live in. The Russian dragons are basically convinced to do their job in combat in exchange for prizes. So they have these insanely big piles of gold that they lie on, and they don't really care about why they're fighting. They don't care what they're fighting for, their country, or even their riders. They just care about their prizes. That's all they care about. And they have these small dragons that work for them. And how the French kind of win over the Russian dragons is by going to the breeding grounds and freeing the dragons that are there. And what they discover is the dragons have these kind of horrid metal contraptions that stop them from flying. So they put these kind of horrible metal like hooks between their wings that stop them from flying. And the French army free them all, like take off these horrible contraptions and let them all fly free and wreak havoc in the Chinese and Russian army. This book gets quite gruesome compared to some of the others. Like, all the other books deal with quite gruesome themes like slavery, but this one kind of really goes above and beyond. I found it a lot darker than the previous books. Also, I didn't like it as much. I really did thoroughly enjoy the 7 novels I've read so far in the Temeraire series, I've been overly, like, overwhelmed with them. It's been an amazing experience. But this one, I had a job getting into it. And the reason for that is Laurence just doesn't feel like Laurence anymore. Because he's lost his memory. He's gone back to being the person he was basically before book 1, when he was still a captain in the Navy and not the captain of Temeraire. And I understand why Naomi Novik wanted to do this. Like, why she wrote this novel, why she wanted to make it this way, to kind of explore what would happen if Laurence weren't Laurence anymore. Does that, like, his bond with Temeraire go beyond everything they have shared together? And if, like, they can be this amazing pair, even, you know, regardless of the memories that they share. But I loved Laurence as the character he became. Like, I really loved the progression that he went through from book 1 all the way to book 7 to become, like, because he really goes on a journey. Like, he starts off, he is a Navy officer, he is the captain of a ship, he doesn't care about the Dragon Corps, he doesn't want to know about this, and then he finds himself the captain of this dragon egg that hatches, and he has to learn how to deal with that. And he finds that his dragon is way more intelligent than what he thought, and that he can do way more things with it than what he thought he could. And in this book, he kind of goes through that all over again, only it takes an entire novel instead of the, like, 2 or 3 chapters it takes in book 1. And it's pretty tedious, honestly, to go through all of that again. So yeah, that side of it was really, really hard to read. I found really, really hard to read. I was very disappointed, as, like, given what's been going on so far. So he does kind of regain his memories. There's kind of things hinted at him. He discovers things on the way. Obviously, he goes through this kind of progression with Temeraire. But still, it was pretty tedious. And I was pretty disappointed with, like, as Laurence's character in this novel. Really, yeah, I didn't appreciate that. I think it would have been way better had they just kind of gone on their adventures as the couple that they were, and to see Laurence grow with Temeraire, like, just continue in that line. I didn't appreciate that. I did appreciate seeing the Russian dragons, because we'd, like I said, they'd been hinted at on a number of occasions in previous novels, what it was like for the dragons in Russia. So that was pretty cool. So, and I definitely wasn't disappointed by that. That all the descriptions of the battles with Napoleon's army, the interactions with his men, all the characters we've got to know up until this point, that was pretty cool. But again, Laurence was like, yeah, he kind of had ghost memories of them. Yeah. So, at the end of this, so far, Blood of Tyrants is the novel that I disliked the most in this series. Actually, the only one that I've read so far that I really didn't like. Like, everything that's been written so far, I was okay with. Like, Naomi Novik just managed to make everything interesting. Really long, tedious sea travel, interesting. Really long treks through the Australian outback, really interesting. Laurence losing his memory and going through everything he went through in book 1 in, like, a whole novel. I didn't appreciate that at all. So yeah, the cultural aspects of it, Japanese dragons, Russian dragons, defeating Napoleon, all good with that. Laurence, just no. Please make him get his memory back for book 9, for the last book in this series. I would appreciate that, for him to just re-become the character that I had fallen in love with in book 1, and just gave my heart to all the way through this series, he was just completely been destroyed in this book. So I would really love to find him again in book 9. My hopes for book 9, League of Dragons, is that Laurence really becomes the character that he was. So yeah.
So yeah, that's it for this video pretty much. That's all I have to say about this. Apart from this like overwhelming feeling of disappointment, yeah, that was Blood of Tyrants by Naomi Novik, the 8th book in the Temeraire series that I am kind of disappointed by. I really didn't get into it as much as I did all the previous books, and it really makes me sad because I love this series so much. So yeah, I have a lot of hopes for book 9. The last book is gonna be the last one, then this series is gonna be over, and I'm gonna have to find something else to pour my heart into. So on the basis of that, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you soon. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Bye bye.